Frontier Pilot Simulator recently received a significant update which overhauls not only much of the game's graphics, but also adds a bunch of new features. Recently, the game's developers, Razer, asked me if I'd like to take a look at the latest update, so we're going to take a look at some of the details in this sponsored video. For more information, do check out the link in the video description below. So for those of you who don't know, Frontier Pilot is, to all intents and purposes, a trucking game. It's largely about delivering commodities and passengers across this rugged alien world. Journeys can be short and undertaken in a light aircraft, or they can be long and undertaken with a huge long-range cargo ship, which is precisely what I'm flying here. Now the aim of the game, of course, is to build a huge stack of credits whilst experience the game's world and missions. There's also a fairly lengthy campaign, which you can begin right at the start of the game. Now the latest update has been designed as an all-around generalised visual and performance improvement, which also brings a few new additions. Graphics are a lot nicer, which is especially noticeable with the environmental effects such as in the sky. The day-night cycle now looks very nice indeed, and lighting also feels better to me, with the sun often being especially noticeable. Various objects and creatures have also been added, as have some new bases such as Metallic N. Okay, so we've got ourselves a project to complete. This right here, the base is a big crater. It's right in the centre of the map. Over on the right, we can see, this is from the map screen, over on the right we can see what products they actually need. The problem is they're listed in red, which means that our ship isn't large enough to actually carry them. So what we're going to do is head on over to the hangar there in the distance and swap this ship for a larger one. Now the larger ships are fairly expensive, all things considered, but I do have quite a reasonable amount of credits, so we can easily afford one and have a decent amount of money left over. You can do plenty of things in the hangar here, which includes upgrading your ship in various ways, such as the engine or the landing gears, or other such things. You can change the colour of the ship as well, which is pretty nice, but in this case we just want to purchase that other ship, the B'Elanna, which has 22.5 tons in cargo carrying capacity. So as soon as we get that, we're good to go. Now the game is very cautious about you actually purchasing these, so you don't waste your money. We need to confirm 3 times with the press of the button before we get the purchase, and here we are with the new ship. So we're going to have a look at where we purchase the needed cargo, and again we can see this from the screen of the map. If we just click on Big Crater here, there we go, we've got a list of needed commodities. So we either want carbon constructions or structural frames. But the carbon constructions are available over here on Raglor, and the structural frames are also available over there. So that's where we're going to need to go to collect these. The trick is that we want to make money on the outgoing trip as well, so we'll have a look what Raglor actually need. So they need G-type batteries, and fortunately enough we can actually purchase those right nearby at the power plant. So we're going to go over there, pick up some of those relatively cheap and sell them at Raglor for a profit, and then bring the other components back to Big Crater. So flying is VTOL. We've got vertical takeoff and landing, very easy to use, but does take some practice, especially with the bigger ships. There's plenty of skill involved with that, and we'll see that further into the video. So here at the power plant, we're going to take these batteries. We're going to recharge the fuel capacity as well, because it's a long trip over to Raglor. We won't be able to do it in one trip actually, as you'll see in a minute. And as soon as the cargo is loaded up, we're good to go. Now cargo does add weight to the ship, and we'll see that down on the bottom right hand side of the screen in just a moment. Cargo can also be damaged if you're not careful with handling of your ship, so if we throw it around a bit too much or land a bit too heavily, we can damage the cargo. And that happens when the indicator goes all the way into the red, so that's something we need to avoid. So it's just a case of being very careful. Something I wasn't careful enough there. Could have completely destroyed that engine. Fortunately we didn't, but as you can see it is smoking a little bit, but it's still in good enough condition to do its job, so we're not going to go back and repair it. We're going to actually head over to Raglor now. That's over to the west, a little bit more west, or northwest actually. So one thing you'll notice is that the takeoff used nearly 1,000 units of fuel. It does burn very, very fast when in VTOL mode. Fortunately though, we have airplane mode, which conserves fuel quite a bit and also allows us to travel faster. But do pay attention, over on the left of the UI there, on the heads-up display, you can see we're travelling at 685. When you're travelling as fast as this, it does convey a lot of lift to the craft. You can see we're slowly, quite rapidly actually, increasing in altitude. So don't want to increase altitude too fast. You're much better off travelling at a slightly slower speed. 252 in this particular case seems pretty decent for keeping a level altitude. And just look at the lighting effects there. This also highlights the new reflections on the water, which have also been improved. Now Raglor is 100 kilometers away. It's going to take too long to get to, just with the amount of fuel that we've got. It's possible we might be able to make it, but I really don't want to risk it. So the solution is to head to a base in between, this case North 1, and refuel. Now North 1, in fact many of the bases are actually very interesting to land at and to take a bit of challenge. Now the landing pad here is nestled right up against a cliff. We don't want to crash into that. Also we don't want to fall down into the vent there. That vent does spurt out water as well, which will, or vapour, one of the two. But that will significantly damage your craft, so again, something you want to avoid. So once we're landed here, we're lining up with the central landing pad, and we'll then be able to recharge our fuel or battery capacity. It's getting pretty low. Unfortunately, I made a very silly mistake here. I went ahead and sold the G batteries. I didn't actually want to sell them to North 1. It wasn't profitable to do so. I was meant to take these all the way to Raglor, where I would have got quite a significant profit for them. So be very careful, try not to make mistakes like that. But no worries, we're going to make plenty of money on the return trip anyway. Once recharged, we're good to go. Now, North 1 being nestled right down in rugged mountainous areas means you need to get a lot of altitude before swapping out to airplane mode. This also means, interestingly enough, that we'll burn quite a lot of fuel. And again, you can see as I accelerate a bit too fast there, when I swap into plane mode, we're getting a rapid altitude gain. Handy when you want to get altitude gain. It helps us avoid the cliffs, of course, but it's something you want to be careful of. As we'll see further into the video, it can cause potential issues. Now, one thing you might be wondering about is awareness of our environment. Sometimes it gets very dark, sometimes it's very misty, and you're unable to see where you're going. Fortunately, the game has an AR mode, which filters all this out and gives us a virtual representation of how things look. Also keep in mind that there's wind effects and many other sort of environmental effects. We can see right here, we get some warnings that will affect our travel. So you have to take all of that into account when you're actually flying around. We're now approaching Raglor, 14 kilometers to go, getting very close, and we come across one of the other new additions to the game in the recent patch. Down there is a whale type creature. This is a new creature that's been added in. It does add some interest to the travels, to your journeys, because you will see different creatures as you're travelling around, different environmental effects, and of course the animations have also been somewhat improved with the patch as well. Right, we're finally here, coming into land, and we haven't got any cargo, so we don't need to worry too much about the touchdown, but I still prefer it to be as gentle as possible. So with the amount of fuel I've now got left, you can see it would have been very unlikely I would have been able to make this journey in a single trip. But that can be countered with the hangar. You can go in there and make a few upgrades to your engines, to your wings. All of these will help conserve fuel or otherwise make your flying more efficient, meaning that you can make journeys like these in a single trip without stopping off. But nonetheless, we're going to recharge. We can see we've got the carbon constructions and the structural frames. So we're going to go with the carbon constructions. There we go. I do like the fact that you physically see these being loaded into the ship. It's a nice touch. Unfortunately, perhaps I can only take a single lot of these in one trip, so we'll be back for the other lot later. Now, I did make the second of my mistakes on this journey. This one was far more significant than selling the batteries at the wrong location. Remember how I told you to be careful when you swap out to airplane mode? We've got to be a little bit careful here, but that wasn't too much of a problem. Unfortunately, I wasn't careful enough here. We're just about to switch out to airplane mode, but I don't have enough velocity. And this is going to cause problems. If I had enough altitude here, I probably would have been able to counter it, but I didn't, and we've got splashdown. Straight into the ejection capsule. Fortunately, the insurance payout will cover the cost of a replacement ship, but it won't cover the cost of a replacement cargo. So what that means is that the carbon units are not available here. At least for now, we're going to need to wait for some more to be built. So we're going to take the structural frames and get on our way. Fortunately, the return journey to Big Crater was uneventful. No more crashes, no more wrecking my ship, and just a case of having to land here nicely and safely without damaging the structural frames. Now again, you can see the indicator over on the bottom right telling us how much damage potentially we're going to cause to the structural frames. If we move too fast, that indicator will move into the red. Some products, some commodities you carry are far more sensitive than others. Some will be almost completely filling the bar there with red, so you have to be very, very careful. But in this case, all was good. But I'm coming in very slow here, simply because the weight is pulling the aircraft down more rapid than I would actually like. So just a case of being very, very careful. Nearly there. There we go. So, Big Crater now has, or will have, once I deliver these, a part of the materials needed for their construction project. All they need now are the carbon constructions. Unfortunately, we missed out on delivering them at this time. So, there we have it, another mission in Frontier Pilot. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.